This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to A Sharp Outlook on K4HD Radio and Talk or TV. I am Angela Sharp, your host. Our armchair discussions with industry experts will give you the steps, tools, and information to be successful in business and to prepare you to be your best self. Hello, and welcome to A Sharp Outlook. Today we're going to have a very exciting discussion on the topic of Indigenous communities and their housing departments and meeting the needs of the community members. And today's title is Inspector in a Box. And when my guest joins, we will be discussing what is in the box. Indigenous communities have struggles in maintaining the housing for their community members. Common issues are housing managers are overburdened and under-resourced, often forced to do the work of multiple departments alone. That model is unsustainable. The solution to these common issues is what we will be discussing today. We want to bring you sustainable solutions to your communities. But despite the countless programs and funding announcements, many communities remain stuck and in crisis mode. And that's where Inspector in a Box will come in and be able to make things so much better for you. It is a practical, tech-enabled program that provides Indigenous communities with the tools, training, and capacity building. This program was created to fill a major gap. Many Indigenous communities lack access to qualified inspectors, cost estimators, or the internal capacity to manage repairs, renovations, and retrofits. The result? Missed funding, delayed projects, and unsafe homes. Inspector in a Box changes that. It delivers a ready-to-deploy system that empowers communities to take control of their housing programs. The program itself was created to fill that gap, and it will deliver a ready-to-deploy system that empowers communities to take control of their housing programs without relying on costly external consultants. Through hands-on training and easy-to-use technology, local candidates are equipped to complete full housing inspections, generate Class B cost estimates, create scopes of work and photo documentation, identify energy retrofit opportunities, prepare funding applications, conduct building condition assessments, and become their own businesses. It's not a service to do the work for the housing department, but to provide scalable, sustainable, and community-driven housing solutions. Inspector in a Box is a capacity building model. By training local candidates and leveraging user-friendly systems, communities gain the power to manage housing projects independently and effectively. Inspector in a Box is a cutting-edge solution designed to build housing capacity within Indigenous communities in Canada and the United States. This is such an incredible topic. I would like to invite Stan Zachary Knight, who is our guest, to talk about this impressive project and product that is available for Indigenous communities. Hello, Stan.
Good morning, Angela. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I'm going to read your bio here. You are a proud member of the Opaskwayak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. You grew up witnessing the direct impact of substandard housing in Indigenous communities. That experience has stayed with you throughout your life and inspired a career committed to real change. The journey has taken you through uh, diverse roles: RCMP officer, building supply store manager, insurance adjuster, and certified home inspector, all of which gave you a deep practical understanding of the housing challenges that face Indigenous people. But despite the countless programs and funding announcements, many communities remain stuck in crisis mode. 2 years ago, you made a conscious decision to fully dedicate energy and talents to Indigenous housing solutions. You relocated your family to British Columbia and immersed yourself in Indigenous housing ecosystem. It didn't take long to see a common issue. Housing managers are overburdened and under resourced, often forced to do the work of multiple departments. That is unsustainable, as I mentioned in the uh, description. And it sparked the idea for something better. Zachary Knight Enterprises Limited, with one mission to create scalable, sustainable, and community driven housing solutions. Inspector in a Box isn't just a service, it's a capacity building model. And I would like to talk about Inspector in a Box. So, what gave you that idea?
Yeah, thank you. Well, one of the things, like when we first moved out to BC, we always understood there was issues with Indigenous housing and just the same consistency of poor products, poor design, poor construction methods, predatory nature of contractors. And when we came out to BC, we believed that we had to be involved within the First Nation organization or Indigenous community organizations to be impactful in the role. So I took positions within various housing departments, and I saw consistency in the programs. It was the fact that housing departments are just, they're understaffed, they're poorly trained, they don't have the resources or the capacity to actually move housing programs forward, and it's a more reactive nature of the position. They spend most of their days just putting out fires and not really moving real housing programs forward. So we kind of came up with the idea that, all right, let's make something that moves inspections and gets housing repairs moving forward, but let's do it in a more autonomous nature where we don't further burden a housing manager or a housing department with babysitting a program. So
Mhm.
we came up with the idea that we offer inspector in a box. We provide all the training necessary to do the work, to do the inspections, and do the scopes of work, cost estimates, and energy rebate programming and funding applications. But the nation or the community maintains the autonomy and the sovereignty of that process. So
Mhm.
the process that we've come up with is the community identifies the candidate they want to train. They give us the initial list of 30 houses they want us to inspect, and we take it from there. We train the candidate to do the home inspections and do the work, and within the first 3 months we hand over 30 completed inspections, and then in those inspections we identify what's wrong with the house, what it costs to fix it, and the steps needed to actually do the repairs. And then we ask the community, okay, we've completed your inspections, we're in the process of training your candidate to fully assume the role that we are doing for this short interim process. And we ask them to identify 5 or 10 units that they want to start repairs on, and we actually do the funding applications to seek and secure the funding to get those renovations started. And
So
then
this kind of supports local job creation also. I mean, it can foster intergenerational wealth and ensure more housing dollars stay in the community. So it's more than just you going in there, like getting, I don't, you probably don't get the little hammer out and things like that, but you're not just going in there fixing the problems, you're training people there in the community to be able to do this long term.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of the whole program, is like to maintain ownership and sovereignty of the process. And so we, like, even though I'm indigenous from northern Manitoba, I don't understand Inuit culture. I'm not from like the Inuit culture. I'm not from the BC indigenous cultures, Métis culture. So even being indigenous, I shouldn't be in the role of a housing manager making those decisions on what's a culturally relevant solution to my community. So, so what we're trying to do is just provide the tools and then identify a local candidate that can bring that culture and history into the mix and provide those answers. But we just provide the tools for them to be able to achieve the results.
That's incredible. I mean, I've worked with the indigenous communities in several capacities, and one of the things that I'm aware of is the housing department, and the fact that just being able to establish self-determination and economic empowerment and building a future for, you know, members of the indigenous community is just an incredible idea. I mean, a lot of people go in and they provide services, but they don't leave the knowledge there in the community. So it's just a constant, outlay of money outside of the community.
Mhm.
So it doesn't help to build that community. Um, and with Inspector in a Box, you're not only helping the members that need their houses worked on, but you are changing lives because you're creating opportunities for jobs, and the those people in the community are being paid to maintain those homes, and now their families are going to learn, different skills. I don't know what all skills are involved. I haven't had to repair a house, so I'm not sure everything that's involved. But tell me more about this Inspector in a Box. It's You say that it's scalable, so you can just go out to different communities. Um, how
Yeah,
does that
exactly.
work?
So the idea is we actually train a community member to do the work and take over the role. And but like the whole idea behind the process is that we work ourselves out of the job, and so eventually that the local candidate becomes that person that does the work. But we when we started this whole process and talking to indigenous communities across Canada and getting their feedback about the program and some of the gaps in what we were offering, we actually started looking at the entire indigenous construction economy in terms of just specifically for new construction for houses and renovation repair of houses. And we wanted to actually set a valuation for that ecosystem and see how much money goes into that stream of funding and kind of what the social impacts of that would be. And so there's no hard and fast report. So it was all empirical data we gathered from different organizations and community groups.
Mhm.
But we set a valuation about $2 billion in Canada goes into the Indigenous construction economy for new construction and renovation repair. And right now, 80 to 90% of that actually leaves in the pockets of consultants and contractors who have no vested interest in the economic development of those communities that they're working with. And so we started looking at that and saying, well, what can we do to change that? How can we retain more of that wealth within the Indigenous community and
Mhm.
really bolster the economy of that community? And so we looked at it, and there was three aspects that we kind of identified that we wanted to focus on with our Inspector in a Box program. One is education. So in 2026, we're going to be launching an Indigenous scholarship program for 4-year degree programs as well as 2-year trade programs to really um, bring about that educational component that's missing.
Mhm.
Their aspect is Indigenous business incubator, because Indigenous people, when they start a business, they have unique aspects that they have to address within starting a business, because like taxation issues is a big issue on
Mhm.
Indigenous communities. Um, even advertising, social media, like we have a different target audience, and our target audience lives in different formats in terms
Mm-hmm.
of where the the general non-indigenous public lives. um, Educate or financing, banking, kind of just all the understanding all the aspects it takes to stand up a business on an indigenous
Yes.
community.
Yes.
So we started focusing on developing an indigenous business incubator. And then the third and final step was capital investment. We actually wanted to focus our capital investment efforts into asking the question, do you have community supports? And if you have community support, you're 99% more likely to succeed as a business. We
Right.
didn't want to be tied to that age-old question, what's your credit score? Because that's been a really detrimental question to Indigenous communities across Canada and the US. So we're focusing capital investment, just to say, yeah, do you have community support? And if you have community supports, we will help. We'll do our best to help you. And
Mm-hmm.
those are the three aspects that we're diverting a lot of our revenue from our Inspector in the Box program into those three to fully to fully grow the Indigenous economy across Canada and US.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important, especially if they're going to be starting businesses besides knowing their trade that they're
Mhm.
going to be doing, just like you said, meeting all of those regulatory requirements to be able to stay in business and not being afraid or setting up a nice, bookkeeping system for them. I know one of the projects that I worked with was going out and doing financial literacy training in indigenous communities here in the U.S., and that's been going on since 2007, 2008, 2009, like 5 years. We spent, having conferences, going, we did train to trainers. So we had trainers out there just, you know, going all over the country at the same time, and just hitting all of the communities and doing financial literacy training and train the trainers. And it also helped for those that are getting per capita. They have to take financial literacy before they're able to get those funds. And so they understand what to do with them and they're keeping more of the money instead of making bad decisions. So, yeah, this is really getting, better by the minute here, Stan. You're really thinking about this whole aspect, and that's really incredible. And so I understand your reasoning for wanting to use this inspector in the box instead of bringing other professionals in, like you said, contractors, and they come in, the cost is generally pretty high, and then they walk away, and there's no no education, no knowledge, and so you're constantly having to, you know, bring them in. And knowledge, as I had another guest on, knowledge is power. And so you're wanting to, in fact, it's probably more valuable than just the cash at the time because you retain knowledge for a long time. And you're able to just continue to keep going. And how does Inspector in the Box change things for Indigenous housing professionals?
Well, like, the biggest thing is we develop ownership of the whole process. So we're allowed to actually say, okay, this is how we want to fix our house. This is the material we want to put into fixing our houses, as opposed to a general contractor coming into the community and dictating, yeah, this is how we're going to fix it, and these are the materials we're going to use.
Mhm.
Um, and it reduces that reliance on the contractor having the say and kind of doing supply and labor at the same time. Because if you separate the two, supply and labor, if you control what materials you purchase and you control who you hire to do the work, you can actually reduce the cost of that whole process by 15%, just splitting those two
Mhm.
processes apart, right? The other thing is, like, it basically allows you to have sovereignty of your decision making process and say, okay, this is how we want to do things, and this is the process we're going to follow. And the final part of that is it retains that wealth back in the community, because now you can decide, okay, well, I can hire Jim the plumber to do just the plumbing aspect of it because he's local and he spends the money in the community. But the long-term vision of the whole thing is we create safe and healthy homes, and we strongly believe that uh, homes are a huge determinant of health and success in communities, because like
Mhm.
like like can you imagine where an elder's discharged from a health facility, they have respiratory illnesses, and they're sent home to recover, and
Mhm.
send them back home to a house that's got mold and it's got
Yeah.
bacteria and infectious diseases within the house and stuff like that. It's not a safe environment, and yet
Mhm.
we send them home to recover. Basically, we're just exposing them to a higher risk factor, and then they're going to get sicker, and then they're going to go back into the health system, right?
Right.
So that just increases the cost to the community for those health costs. Plus, it endangers the elderly or the people that have chronic respiratory illnesses and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But the other aspect of it is the success. Like, we can build the biggest and best school in the world, spend $50 million on an educational facility, hire the greatest teachers, and then we send our kids to this school and expect them to succeed. But in reality, they're waging a war trying to survive their own home environment because it's unhealthy. There's pests and vermin and mold and everything else, and it's unheated and it's poorly maintained, all that stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
they spend 18 hours in that environment trying to survive that, and then when they go to school, we think they're primed for success, when in reality it's just a respite for the war they're fighting at home. Like, how
Right.
are they supposed to succeed in that kind of environment? So
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
we can provide a safe, healthy house, then
Yeah.
all the other things that we're providing in the other context of education and health, those actually have a chance to succeed and make a difference if they come from a safe, healthy home.
Well, using hands-on training and easy-to-use technology, candidates are equipped to do what types of services?
They can do so. They're at its core, inspector in a box is data collection. So, and that's a really important piece. It's not just home inspections. It's collecting data of all different aspects of a home. So we can collect the data that's needed to do the home inspection. We can collect the data that's needed to do asset management, energy rebate programming, and energy, like all different types of other data that is needed to understand the housing environment. The results are like scopes of work, class B cost estimates, energy rebate programming, funding applications. Like, there's a lot of one-off funding that's available. Like, say, like in a community, there's one-off funding that you can access to fix 10 roofs. Uh,
Mhm.
and our data collection process, and it enables you to actually collect the data that you need to identify which 10 roofs you can fix, and then now you can just chase that funding, right? And
Mhm.
that's the important thing, is it collects the data that you need to access funding that you can get to actually complete the repairs and move these projects forward.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
Um, Now, those that need to be trained on how to use that technology, that's a part of uh, services that you're providing to teach them the technology, how to use that technology.
Yeah, yeah. We enroll them in a program called Carson Dunlop. It's a home inspection course. It's an online course. It's nationally and internationally recognized. It's actually used in, I think, 30 different other countries for home inspection training, and it's recognized in Canada and U.S. as well. So that's the primary core function of Carson Dunlop, is is the home inspection process, and understanding deficiency recognition, which is so important because um, deficiency recognition is one of those things where if you can look at something and understand, okay, there's something wrong here, and being able to explain what that item is that's wrong and how to fix it is so important to moving things forward. So we go through the Carson Dunlop course, and that's usually 6 months to a year, where we support the candidate and to help with peer tutoring to help them understand that whole
Mhm.
that whole skill set. And then we teach them on how to use a drone to do roof inspections and aerial photography, and do the actual entire property to understand drainage issues within that property, thermal cameras, moisture meters, laser measuring tools. There's several apps that we actually provide within the smartphone that we send them, as well as our actual home inspection software.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I was reading about what's in the box, and it's like smartphones with preloaded inspection apps, drones for, like you said, with memory cards for aerial inspections, a thermal camera attachment to detect heat loss and moisture. I didn't even know they did that. I learned a lot. you know, Moisture meter and measuring tools for structure assessments, laser measuring tools for accurate floor plans, and training guides and report templates for seamless inspections. I mean, so they just open the box and there they are. They have everything that they need to perform their job.
Yeah, we strongly believe that technology is the great equalizer in terms of knowledge, learning, and developing a skill base for inspection occupations. Um, like in the old days, like the typical home inspector right now you look at is somebody that's in their 40 late 40s 50s. They have 25 years experience of carpentry and construction and understand that whole process. um, but we're actually trying to change that mindset of what that home inspector is, and we're targeting a younger, more youthful audience, because
Hmm.
we're trying to bring that knowledge base and that skill set training and condense it into a 1 year time frame, so that that person now can learn what it would take a normal somebody doing construction and carpentry uh, around like 5 years. We're trying to condense it to 1 year using technology, and there's a lot of things with technology that allows us to actually to speed up that process, especially like remote learning. But smartphones are one of the biggest things in that intuitive connection to technology. And so, like I always have the same comment. Like, you give a 50-year-old carpenter a smartphone and they make a phone call, but
Hmm.
you give a 20-year-old a smartphone and they're banking, watching videos, downloading all sorts of resource material, and they can live their life using a smartphone, right?
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and so there's so much technology out there that's available through like different apps and different functions through a smartphone, that we can actually shorten the learning curve and really condense that time frame and produce within 1 year somebody that has all the tools and knowledge to do home inspections and to actually move housing programs forward.
Incredible. As I was, doing my research, I also saw, in addition to direct community delivery, Inspector in a Box is also available as a franchise, enabling Indigenous entrepreneurs to operate their own housing support businesses. So, are there any specific requirements to own a franchise?
Uh, Not really. Like, the whole franchise process came up as a result of our initial meetings with communities, and them identifying gaps and deficiencies within our service offerings. Like originally when we launched Inspector in a Box, it was just a remote capacity development and inspection process. But when we presented it to communities, they said, well, okay, well, when you train somebody so they can do home inspections, how do we keep them within that skill set and keep them employed within that? Because there's a lot of one-off training programs where somebody can spend 3 months to be an IT tech, but
Hmm.
6 months later they're pushing a broom because there's no job prospects within that training.
Right.
So we thought about that, said, okay, well, after we train our candidate, why don't we certify them as home inspectors across Canada and the US? And so they can actually just continue to do the home inspection business, not just within their own community, but within the municipalities and geographical areas that they're living in, and actually generate a revenue that can keep them employed and bring them economic develop or prosperity. And then
Right.
so we looked at that and said, okay, well, we'll train them as home inspectors and certify them so they can have businesses. And then the next question that came up as a result of that is, well, after they're a business, how do we support them? So we
Hmm.
thought about that and said, okay, well, why don't we develop Inspector in a Box and offer a franchise model where that candidate can now come in, become a franchisee, and we can support them with our own infrastructure for that 3 to 5 years where most businesses fail, right? Get them over that hump, and then we can support them with our own invoicing and scheduling and email systems and inspection software and all that. And then hopefully within that, after that 3 to 5 year time frame, we can approach them and say, hey, look, you're a successful business now. You have your own clients. You're generating your own revenue. Maybe it's time for us to part ways and you to go on as your own business, as your own entity, and we'll always be there to support you if you ever have any questions, if you ever have business development questions or want to learn more and continuing education, like we'll be there. But it's time to go on your own, and that's kind of how the franchise model kind of came up as a just a it's an interim way to support a candidate, and hopefully that candidate within 3 to 5 years can actually become their own business. And that's kind of what we'd like to see, because at the end of the day we still live by that motto of we work ourselves out of the job,
Hmm.
because there like there's 660 nations across Canada. There's 500, I think 40 in the US. That's
74. Yeah.
yeah, there's
574.
there's over 1,200 Indigenous communities, nations across Canada and US. It's not like we'll ever be out of a job. So,
Right.
but the idea, the long term vision is we have somebody capable in each and every community across Canada and US to fulfill these roles, right? And really
Hmm.
fix
And then
health.
train their children,
Yeah,
and it
exactly.
just continues, and the business continues to grow.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some smaller tribes, but there are some much larger tribes, and you'd have to have like 20 inspectors
Mhm.
that are there. I mean, it's just, huge, and the businesses, and they can then train there. I know when I was in school many years back, um, learning skills training was something that was done in high school. In middle school, they would begin, and then in high school, they were able to go do shop. They were able to learn all types of skills, carpentry, plumbing, things like that. They don't do that in school anymore. I'm not
Mhm.
really sure why they felt that was not a needed service. Instead, you're learning poetry. I'm sorry. I'm digressing, but learning skills that would actually benefit you in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and your 50s is something that would be really important. And so, them learning those skills and then passing those skills on to other youth, either in their family or others in the community. I mean, it can just go on for generations. So, as you mentioned, it's going to establish generational wealth, something that will last for years and years. And believe me, as long as there's a house, there's always going to be a need for a house. It's like as long as people live, you're always going to need health care. So, I
Mhm.
mean, there's just some skills out there. They're never going to stop being needed someplace. in the region. And so it's just a fantastic idea. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to kind of point out that like the the home inspection industry, um, like the statistics for 2024 is it's over like $6 billion in terms of
Hmm.
revenue that it can
Hmm.
create within North America. Like that's $6 billion that we can have access to. But
Yeah.
not just that, like when we talk about retaining that economic prosperity within the communities, like when I said there's a valuation of $2 billion a year, but we also look at the trickle down effect of the economic of prosperity, where
Hmm.
we spend a dollar in a community, it's generally spent three times over. So
Right.
if there's $2 billion spent within the Indigenous community in Canada, that's $6 billion a year that we could retain for ourselves. Can you
Hmm.
imagine what kind of generational impact $6 billion would have to our housing community? And
Hmm.
that's the same thing with the US as well. Like there's so much revenue that's spent that just leaves the community, and we need to keep
Yes.
that. We need to maintain ownership of that revenue. And
Right.
that's how we get out of poverty is keeping that money within the communities.
Yeah. How well is this being received in communities? I mean, some of their key issues are they have geographic isolation, like you said, labor shortage, systemic underfunding, aging infrastructure, overburdened housing departments. I mean, the list goes on as to
Mm.
why this is so needed. But how has it been received in communities?
Oh, it's it's the response has been crazy. We've had so much response from so much communities. Um, we like this year. One of the big things we've focused on is developing strategic partnerships, because that's kind of another gap that we identified is like when we go through the process of seeking um, renovation money and securing it, then all of a sudden now we're in a position where now we need a project manager to actually oversee the
Hmm.
renovation repair of these homes that we've identified for that work. Um, and we kind of identified that we can't fill that role because we're filling the role of already of doing the inspections and the training. We don't have capacity to be project managers as well to do the renovations, but we have to safeguard that process, because all the work we've done with the inspection process and securing that funding, if we put in a project manager that's just there to fill their pockets and get the hell out of Dodge, then we failed at our process, because we're still
Right.
going to wind up with a deficient house, right? So we
Hmm.
started kind of reaching out and developing strategic partnerships across Canada and US and saying, hey, look, we want to find project managers and construction companies and engineers and stuff like that that are in the space for the right reason, and not just
Hmm.
line their pockets and get rich off one project, but actually want to see economic development and prosperity for Indigenous communities, and identifying those groups and organizations, and being able to say, when we talk to a community, we walk in with our inspector in a box hat, and all of a sudden they're trying to fit us in for like economic development and public works and infrastructure development, and we're like, we want to be able to say, well, we can't help you with that. Like we don't do that, but we know a person that can help you, and we can make that introduction, and then have that person fulfill that role, and be that guardian of that of for that nation to do that work, right? uh,
Hmm.
so that's kind of what we've really been focusing on, is identifying those good candidates that we can hand off that work to. um, and part of that process is we've also been building our internal team in terms of being poised to be able to just start taking on client after client and client, and doing the training and doing the work, because like there's obviously such a great need, and the response has just been phenomenal. Like we have a waiting list of 50 or 25 communities right now just in Canada alone who want us
Wow.
to inspector in a box, and we said we're just not ready to take on the volume of the clients.
Mm-hmm.
Want to work out some of the kinks this year with the program in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like the software integrations and the costing and all that stuff, because the more we do it, the more we can reduce the actual subscription costs for the software and all this other stuff. Um, Another key piece that we were able to put together this year was we've just signed a partnership with a company called Climate Door out of British Columbia. And
Mm-hmm.
Climate Door has graciously agreed to do all our funding applications to launch our program, as well as to secure the rebate or the renovation funding free of charge. Like they'll do that free of charge. We'll
Mm-hmm.
do all that work and get the our program launched using leveraging existing federal provincial funding programs, as well as secure the uh, renovation funding using existing programs that are out there, and client
Mm-hmm.
will actually do all that work free. So, and that's been a really key piece. Now we're finally at the point where we're ready to start just taking the volume on.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So, looking to build capacity or become an entrepreneur or ready to launch their own venture, Inspector in a Box offers a path forward. What are the steps to get in contact with your organization? What is your email and phone
Um,
number? How should people get in touch with you? I'm saying we want to throw more work onto you, Stan.
yeah. Yeah, generally just our email is stanknight911 at gmail.com. That's the most monitored email I have. And then our
Mhm,
website address is zacharynightenterprises.com. Um,
mhm,
but generally what we're doing is like the work that we're doing is for Indigenous communities. So it's usually the Indigenous communities that reach out to us and say, okay, yeah, we want to move forward with fixing homes, and then
mhm,
they identify the candidate. Uh, in future, like in probably 2 more years, we'll be at the point where somebody can reach out to us directly as an individual and say, hey, I want to launch an Inspector in a Box franchise within my own geographical area, and we'd be
mhm,
in a position to help them and do that role as a standalone franchise company.
mhm.
But right now, we're focused on taking on Indigenous communities as clients, and then getting that work moving forward to fixing homes. But the long-term vision is to develop that direct franchise pathway as well, because, like I said, like the the franchise business model within the home inspection franchise business model within Canada and U.S. is like I think it was like $6 billion or $4 billion a year. Like
Mhm.
huge. That's a huge amount of money that we can tap into, right? And really like generate generational wealth. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Have you attended any conferences, any Indigenous conferences to
Uh,
discuss your project?
yeah. This fall I was planning on attending I think 4 conferences, and I had to cancel them all because I just didn't have the time. We've been just so swamped with work and trying to kind of put all the pieces we need together.
Mhm,
So for 2026, I do have, I think, 4 conferences in Canada planned. I haven't really kind of finalized any US conferences this year, but there's probably a couple that I would love to go to. But it's just kind of finding the time, um,
okay.
because we've bootstrapped this company since we started it in January of 2025, and because of that, I've been kind of fulfilling all the roles of business development and all the other stuff, and we're finally in a position where we can actually hire some bodies to do some of
Mhm,
the admin positions.
mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully in the spring I'll have maybe 6 conferences that I can attend.
I have some recommendations for you. I'll
Yeah,
send
thank
them
you.
to you.
Definitely, definitely.
I know of some that are going to be starting as early as January,
Mhm.
and throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I definitely will send you some contact information for some of the indigenous communities that have probably some of those issues, and would definitely appreciate being a part of this business that you've put together, and this opportunity you've put together to just develop those skills
Mhm.
among their youth. Because one of the reasons that I do this podcast is to bring information to the next generation. My generation, most of my friends are retired already, so it's time to share with the next generation. And so we want to let them know everybody doesn't have to go to college. There are opportunities using your hands and skills and things like that. Right now, we can't even get our infrastructure done here in the US because we don't have enough skilled labor.
Mhm.
We've had a bridge here in this Washington, Portland, Oregon area that has needed to be replaced for years, and they still have had to delay it another 5 years because there's not enough skilled labor. They've been trying to do classes on skills training and things like that. And for whatever reason, some of the youth are not um, signing up. I mean, the skills training, it doesn't cost anything. You're going to get an opportunity to get an apprenticeship, but yet they're not signing up for the skills training. So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the delay is, but it's an opportunity to have your own business. So, I'm highly recommending that. One of the things that will last any type of recession, depression, economy failure, whatever, is having skills training in things like this, doing,
Mhm.
building some houses, or going and repairing equipment, or repairing homes, or, repairing roads, or things like that. That stuff is always going to be needed. Some of your corporate jobs, they can come and go, but things on the ground, things with your hands, you're never going to be in a situation where it's not needed. And so I'm really, sending out the call. You're going to want to jump on this because
Mhm.
it gives you an opportunity to be your own boss, work the hours that you need to, expand it, grow it, whatever it is that you want to do. And you don't have to, you know, learn classes that you're never going to use like you do in college.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an opportunity. And I really want to encourage you younger people to go out there and just learn about all the different skills: plumbers, electricians, construction, housing, going in and tearing out, materials safely, and fixing homes, because there were some homes built with materials that are have carcinogens in them, and all sorts of um, items in it that would really damage the respiratory system. So yeah, this is just a phenomenal idea, Stand. It's I'm just so happy for you. I'm happy for the organization, and I'm really happy that you were able to join us. Is there anything else you would like to share before we end today?
Yeah. Just a quick thing about skill trades, like you mentioned how important it is, and I had a discussion with a community member, and he mentioned an important statistic that I thought was just shocking. Was in his community, he's got 42 people that have PhDs, and they have one plumber. Like, like, yeah, it's great to have our higher education, but we need the trades, and the focus has been so much on higher education in the past 20 years that we've neglected the trades. Now we have a
Yeah,
community that can create all sorts of policy, but they have one broken toilet, and they're going to be in
trouble.
right.
But imagine if they get 50 of them in a community.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so important, because we need to start building those trades again, because that is a bottleneck in infrastructure development for us. And
Yes.
and that's why we started focusing on diverting more revenue from our program into the education, into the trades programs, as well as capital investment, so that we can start standing up more of these Indigenous businesses. And just demystify that business process, because everybody thinks it takes, you have to have an MBA to start a business. It's not true, because
there's too many other skilled types of businesses out there. You don't have to have any of this. Well, I want to say thank you for joining me today, and we will talk more in the future. And for those who are listening, there's opportunities, and I hope that you take advantage of these opportunities and get a hold of Stan Knight and his program. And I just want to thank everyone that tuned in today. And let's just think about the different opportunities that are available and take advantage of where they are. Thank you again for joining A Sharp Outlook. We're here every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time, and we are happy for you to go and join us on the website, www.asharpoutlook.com, and sign up so you don't miss one of our programs. Thank you again, and whatever you do, stay informed. I want to thank you for joining us on A Sharp Outlook. We have been informed and energized to take the next steps. We have posted links to websites and videos to learn more on today's topic. Please join us again next week for another thought-provoking conversation right here on K4 HD Radio and Talk 4 TV. Listen to the podcast on all the podcast apps. And until next week, stay informed.